Hello internet, before we begin I just want to say that all proceeds in this video will be going to Charlie Kirk's GiveSendGo, and I will post an update a week from now on all the money that we raised. But anyway, real quickly, I know it's late, but I just want to take a second of silence to honor all the innocent lives lost in the 9/11 attacks. Thank you very much. Today we are going to be debunking all the retarded arguments we see online justifying Charlie Kirk's extremely tragic passing. Unfortunately, this topic isn't just about Charlie himself, as there have been victims in the past and there will be more victims in the future who die from disgusting, senseless political violence. And today isn't going to be a fun video for me to make, but I will stay calm and positive and deliver you my best arguments against the horrible things I've read. Charlie believed in open dialogue, and I promised in a post I made for him to stay strong and to continue his legacy in doing this, regardless of how we feel right now and how angry and sad many of us are, including myself. It's still important to have logical ammunition for those who are still victims of propaganda and radical political messaging. Some people are insane and maybe no amount of messaging will de-radicalize them, but I want to give it my best shot. So without further ado, let us examine and debunk the abhorrent arguments unfortunately spewed by Redditors. Empathy is a harmful new age term. Charlie Kirk. Don't let mass shooting victims control the narrative with empathy. Charlie Kirk. Gun violence deaths are the cost of keeping our Second Amendment rights. Charlie Kirk. 8.5 thousand upvotes. Alright, so this person is taking multiple quotes and completely removing any context, for which I will now provide. So for the first quote, the real quote is,
"The new communication strategy is not to do what Bill Clinton used to do, where he would say, 'I feel your pain.' Instead, it is to say, 'You're actually not in pain.'" So let's just, very short clip. Bill Clinton in the 1990s, it was all about empathy and sympathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage, but it is very effective when it comes to politics. Sympathy I prefer more than empathy. That's a separate topic for a different time.
Yeah, that sounds a bit different when you hear the whole thing. The second quote is just basically made up. I couldn't find a single source of him saying it. Redditor lies, sky is blue, you get it. And the last one, again, let me give you the full quote since these people aren't honest enough to, and I will give you Charlie Kirk's full context video segment and put captions over it, and then we'll discuss each one.
Now, we must also be real. We must be honest with the population. Having an armed citizenry comes with a price. Wow. And that is part of liberty. Wow. Driving comes with a price. 50,000 people die on the road every year. That's a price. You get rid of driving, you'd have 50,000 less auto fatalities. But we have decided that the benefit of driving, speed, accessibility, mobility, having products, services, is worth the cost of 50,000 people dying on the road. Wow. So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. Right. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, by having more armed guards in front of schools. We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence, but we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
Yeah, so again, Reddit is just completely misquoting him and leaving out every bit of context possible. Again, this is very routine for these very misguided people, so there's no surprise here, but let's address each argument. So his first argument about empathy can be generally summarized that politically, empathy is used as a rhetorical tool to push bad policy, and when your heart bleeds for every single act of gun violence, you can't forget the horrors that governments all around the world have done to their citizens in the past, and must act sensibly and uphold the principles of the freedoms that you actually fight for. that's basically the argument, not don't have empathy for people. The context was in a very political setting. Now, did he express this idea in the best way possible? Probably not. He did say at the end that's a separate topic for a different time, so maybe there's a quote out there or, where he dives deep into this. But, I mean, that's pretty sensible. That's what I thought, and it is okay to sympathize with people, but when you're using particular types of emotional rhetoric, you can have people vote against their own interest or the best interest for the country, which is what I think he was saying. So the last two quotes, despite not actually being quotes, but just retarded misinterpretations of what he said, I mean, if you can find these exact quotes, let me know, but I personally couldn't. It doesn't really matter. We all know what he means. There is a consequence to freedom, especially the Second Amendment, but you know what? These people love ignoring all the people saved by guns because the government doesn't like the data that would give them less power and authority to take away your freedoms. That's how I truly think about this argument, but why can't we just protect schools way better than we currently are? I'd prefer our taxes going to that, but anyway, we've talked about this one for a little longer than I wanted, so let's continue. And I quote from Old Charlie Boy, "George Floyd was a scumbag and unworthy of any attention, so this dude is unworthy of my attention. Anyway, what's everyone's dinner plans?" 2.7k upvotes. Now, Reddit is full of a bunch of left-wing or liberal millennial retards whose humor is as unoriginal and cringe as they are. On almost every single post, you'll see someone talking about dinner, and they all say it like it's the funniest joke that's ever been told. That alone makes me unreasonably upset, not because it has to do with Charlie, but just because it shows how fucking immature and unoriginal these people are. But yeah, maybe you shouldn't make a martyr out of someone who threatens pregnant women with armed robbery. On a human level, I think any type of, tragic abuse and overdose from drugs is horrible, and it's understandable that people may take this one quote and just run with it, but it's also understandable that the damage caused to cities and people's lives by the reaction to his death was not justified or worth anything in any way. However, if the quote is actually real, because I couldn't personally find it, I do disagree somewhat with this quote. I think the fentanyl crisis is something worthy of attention, regardless of whose life it takes, but I'm splitting hairs now, and regardless of how you feel of George Floyd, you don't deserve to be assassinated over it. Now here's a Reddit classic. I will never not celebrate the immediate death of a Nazi. 408 upvotes. The only time this argument could even have been somewhat valid is if he was actually someone who was spreading neo-Nazi beliefs and trying to actively eradicate certain populations that he disliked. I never saw him advocate for this ever, so this argument is retarded, and Redditors will call any argument right of Mao, alt-right, or neo-Nazi rhetoric, so taking these statements seriously is simply a waste of time. So for the next one, I am going to say what I have been elsewhere, how the establishment interests love to pick and choose what violence to condemn and massively emphasize or censor. Being an opponent to women holding on to their basic rights is violence. Being against LGBTQ+ people having basic human rights is violence. Being in the sphere of a fossil fuel fascism and working against addressing the horrific climate crisis and overall environmental crisis is violence. The list goes on. We as a world need to recognize that violence is being perpetrated against the working class and the most vulnerable every single damn time. And I know they said damn. Fucking idiot. They don't want to talk about that violence though. 73 upvotes. Okay, now we all know you love copying and pasting the same message everywhere. You'll see a lot of Redditors do this across multiple of the same posts because they have no lives, and it's a big day for the unemployed every time something like this happens. And they say it's so brave too, like they'll get any legitimate pushback for saying shit like this. But anyway, killing your child isn't a basic right. But saying stopping you from killing your child is violence is peak irony in my opinion. And second, I actually agree that the government should afford the same legal privileges of marriage to everyone equally. You either do that or revoke the tax privileges for everyone. However, this is not a human right, which doesn't make it not important, but calling it a human right is just wrong. Cutting your penis off is also not a human right, and again, not letting people mutilate themselves being labeled as violence is also peak irony. However, I can't think of a right that straight people have that gay people don't. If we're going to have this discussion, I need you to be more specific. On their next point, I personally like the environment. I know it's a crazy take. I personally hate the trees getting cut down in my area and the shitty housing that's being built for the carpetbaggers coming down here and taking all of our space and jobs. I know they're talking about fossil fuels, but I think people are fatigued about hearing how the earth will be flooded in the next 20 years, 70 years ago, every 20 years. You know, I'm not a scientist, and I'm sure there is validity to the earth heating up and climate getting more extreme, but my solution has always been to let the market innovate and the economy grow. But the biggest problem here is calling fossil fuels fascism. I'm sympathetic to your concerns until you go full retard on me, of course. So please stop calling everything fascist, especially when someone just got murdered for sharing their opinion you don't like. The irony is suffocating me. On their last point though, we can talk about how the government unfairly treats its citizens and how corporations and corporate interests and regulations take advantage of the working class all day. I hate the gigantism that's plagued any chance at a free market in America, and I think shareholder interest actually doesn't benefit society as a whole. I know, I can think for myself, crazy isn't it? But calling it violence in the same way you discussed throughout the whole post is doing the cause no favors, and it also doesn't justify murdering Charlie Kirk. So I don't really understand how any of these points are relevant at the end of the day. But let's continue. Look, the perfect angel did what he wanted to do. Show some children in execution. Rest in power, King. 28 upvotes. These people are just repulsive and bringers of chaos. They don't have a real argument. They only want to hate people and be violent. So that is all the attention I will give it. Here's Elizabeth Warren's take on the matter if anyone actually cares.
Oh, please. Right. Why don't you start with the President of the United States? Right? And every ugly meme he has posted and every ugly word.
Okay guys, what do you think is worse? Ugly memes and words or political assassinations? I'll let you decide. Now, that's what I call a distraction from the Epstein files. 14,000 upvotes. So here we have someone saying that Charlie Kirk's death is, I guess, just a distraction from the Epstein files. I guess Donald Trump killed Charlie Kirk also, and they say that the right are the conspiracy theorists. But did you know that posting about it every single day, more times than the Muslim prays, actually won't summon the Epstein files? They may not worship God, but they're more religious than many. So here's a video of mainstream Democrats condemning the violence.
This is horrific. This is awful. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk risks an uncorking of political chaos and violence that we cannot risk in America.
I cried when I found out he died. So all of us have got to work together and de-escalate the hate and the rhetoric in this country. And remember, we're Americans, and you can disagree in a way that doesn't end in a horrible way today did.
We should all resist the temptation just to point fingers. That takes us nowhere. We should be rejecting gun violence and political violence in all of their forms, regardless of who the target is.
And this is the top comment. The more Democrats express sympathy for that piece of shit Kirk, the more MAGA trash call for destroying Democrats. Showing weakness to criminals only eggs them on and makes them feel righteous. Democrats remember this already. MAGA fascists don't give a damn about Kirk himself. Don't be afraid to speak the truth about him. 2.2 thousand upvotes. No, actually, regardless of how we feel about the rhetoric being spread that escalated to this situation, the rational parts of our minds still would prefer seeing people spread sympathy for the death instead of celebrating it. In fact, it might actually de-escalate things if we all actually showed outspoken sympathy for whoever dies to political violence. What I find crazy about this tweet is that they tell others not to show weakness, sorry, it's not a tweet, fucking post, for MAGA people because they're all criminals supposedly, when we've seen what Democrats being weak to real criminals actually results in. And to pretend we don't care about Charlie Kirk is just sheer projection. I didn't agree with everything he said, but I don't want anyone to die, even the retarded commies on Twitch like Hassan Piker. Because I know it will eventually result in the death of innocent people, which is why violence against those who only preach open and honest discussion is just a horrible idea. But saying people don't actually care is just pure hatred and projection for how they feel about politics. They don't care about the process, they only want violence and a means to justify it. The way no one cared this way when Minnesota politicians were gunned down, 627 upvotes. Now, this person is talking about the 2 politicians that Vance Bolter killed that we almost got no information on. This was definitely a tragedy, and I definitely cared when it happened and talked about and condemned it, as it wasn't only their life that was taken, but the woman's husband and dog also. Which just goes to show how fucking psychotic Bolter was, but we are still waiting for that manifesto that supposedly doesn't exist to drop, so come on, Cash. Honestly, you've been a disappointment, man, from the very beginning, so I won't expect much more. But if you want explanation for why people care more about this event, it's very simple. Charlie Kirk's presence online was magnitudes bigger than these politicians, and he was murdered brazenly in front of thousands of people. Both events are tragic, but one happening in the middle of the day in front of thousands of people is way more potent than a random psychopath trying to go on a killing spree in the middle of the night. I'm not saying one is more important than the other, I'm just explaining the reality. I wish all the families and victims well in both tragedies. But as you guys can see, the wheel of political blood sports will keep turning, and Redditors will continue to triple and quadruple down on any justification for violence that benefits them. And I hope everyone who calls for violence faces the full consequences of the law. And like I said, all proceeds for this video will be going to Charlie and his family on GiveSendGo. And I hope you guys found this video useful in any way. See you soon, take care, and stay safe.